Daniel, welcome to the podcast. Do you mind giving us a quick overview of your company, Industrias, and your role at the company?
Sure. And first, thanks very much for having me on, Alex. Really appreciate it. I'm Daniel Lazarus, co-founder, and as what LinkedIn describes me as director of partnerships, if you like. We started Industrias Services Group, or Industrias, about 5 years ago. Myself and my fellow co-founder, we were the head of sales and head of installs, respectively, for one of the largest commercial solar installers at the time. And we saw really the wave of the enormous growth that the construction side of solar really had from, call it 2015 to even now. It's growing and growing and growing exponentially. In fact, it's one of the fastest growing industries in the country. It has been for the last little bit. But with all the eyes and attention on the growth of the construction, we saw a really large gap starting to really form and become a lot more relevant over time. And that was really around the maintenance of these particular systems being constructed. There's various reasons as to why people weren't really focusing on it much. But what really, became really relevant for myself and Jamie, who's the co-founder, is that these systems were being constructed and sold on a 20-year ROI, or return on investment, over time, based on what that asset would generate and perform. And what became very obvious, even after the first 3 or 4 years, is that these systems weren't performing like they were, or like they should be. That maintenance was required in order to ensure these systems performed as it should. And most importantly, as these assets become older and older, the safety around those systems become really, really important. I mean, these are assets which are outside 24 hours a day, and really nothing was really being done. We've got 4 million solar assets across Australia, which is more solar systems per capita than any country in the world. And so we're really on the forefront when it comes to anything around solar, but certainly around construction and legislation. But maintenance really wasn't being done at all. It wasn't being sold. The way that people were doing it wasn't profitable, so no one was incentivized to actually do it at all. And Australia being so massive and such a disparate country from a population perspective, it was almost impossible, and certainly not being done by anyone successfully, on being able to deliver a centralized maintenance service across the country. There's not many companies that do that anyway in any industry, let alone in solar, which, when you compare it to other industries, can be called embryonic from how mature it would be. And so for us, we saw an enormous opportunity, knowing that every single system that will be constructed, every single one will require maintenance at some point in time. And no one was really doing it. So when it comes to, again, performance or safety, emissions reductions, or any other incentive, it was really on someone to step up and ensure that these systems did what they were supposed to be doing. Ultimately, though, the irony is, as a final thought though, the irony is that these systems cost millions of dollars, millions and millions and millions of dollars, with a huge amount of stakeholders and time being put into tenders and the process of approvals to be able to be constructed. And yet very little attention was being put to these systems straight after the fact, after they were being constructed, which is the ultimate irony of all this.
Yeah, it's an interesting story in starting it. I mean, identifying that gap. Again, I haven't really heard of solar maintenance too much. So you've identified that need in the market, and then you obviously started this company with your co-founder. So how did you actually get your first customers on board and actually validate your idea?
So for us, it's really important. I think this goes for really any business, and I'm not going to sit here as in I'm the Jeff Bezos of business here, but certainly I think it really helps when you go into, or when you're starting a business, to have some sort of experience in that particular industry or that particular area. I think all too often people come in from external industries and don't really understand either the pitfalls, but most importantly, to your question, is don't really have any network that would be relevant to help them start the business. For us, having a background in construction meant that we had customers that we knew had systems that had either been around for a fair period of time or were starting to fail, and has allowed us to then draw on those initial networks to then grow the business since inception without any investment. So we really drew on those initial networks and knowledge of very specific systems to say, okay, we know that these systems exactly fit our target market. So they might have been larger, older, problematic. They might have existed in perhaps just Sydney where we started, and maybe Melbourne, for example, and allowed us to then start off from that very low-hanging fruit base to then grow to where we are today. So for me, that was critically important to start.
Nice. And getting those first customers on board, was it the case of you calling these people? Were you going to networking events at all? What were some of those strategies that allowed you to bring those on?
So it's interesting because if I was to put my mind on the other foot, is to say, okay, well, if I owned a portfolio of assets, would I go ahead with a business with very limited experience in doing that? And I think that that's where the network becomes really handy for people to just give you a go, because they know that, one, you'll get there, two, they've got the existing relationship, and three, they know that you're capable enough to deliver the product at some point in the short term to then deliver value for them. So I'm not going to lie, the companies that were our first customers knew who we were personally and had faith in us to deliver the work when they knew that we were still developing. I mean, we're always developing, but certainly from the very beginning. We also started like many people would start, which is doing some consulting work here and there. I mean, that's a fairly low-hanging fruit that you don't really need infrastructure to be able to deliver for the most part. But those relationships really helped a lot. I don't think if I went to a networking event and met a stranger, they would be, okay, how long have you been in business? 6 months, brilliant. Here's a portfolio of 100 sites that we want you to manage, right? So in fact, and that's the irony in all of this, is that I think because we didn't have investment, yes, we've grown much slower, but we've been able to grow more organically around that, which means that we are comfortable. Obviously, we always wanting to push, but we're a lot more comfortable that we're going to be, that if we take on a new client, we'll be able to deliver a good result.
Totally. Makes sense. And yeah, obviously we talked earlier before we started recording and talking about growing organically versus external investment. Was that ever a thought that came into your mind, to get some investment and do a funding round, or was it never the case?
No, in short, yes, it was a thought. Absolutely. I think anyone who starts a business, that is a thought. There was a couple of reasons why it didn't happen. One is that we started at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, which was COVID time. So not the greatest time to look for investment, but I will actually say quite an interesting and actually not a bad time to start a business in general, especially a business with no overheads and, a time where the industry is essentially filtering itself. So people couldn't get away with these crass business models and policies. A lot of the competitors or people that might have been doing what we were doing might have reduced or fallen by the wayside, allowed us to really have the time to build a profitable and strong business. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that investors are definitely more attracted to the bright lights of SaaS business than a service-based business. And even though if we ran through our process, I would definitely consider us a technology-led services business, we're still a services business. And so that comes with inherently less downside, but less upside. So there's never been a service business in history that has grown X in a year. Like, it's just simply not possible. We need people to do stuff on site. Now what we're doing is definitely helping us grow profitably. And if we didn't have the processes that we do, we would not have been able to grow, and we've not have been able to grow profitably. But that is a big reason as to why investment just wasn't the option, and why we had to look at alternative and maybe more innovative business models in order to grow and succeed in the sector.
Yeah, makes sense. And being a tech-led services-based business, certainly it's got its challenges and also its pros, because it's typically a little bit easier to get up and running and make your first money in a services business compared to software. Requires a lot of capital to get started. And
for sure,
to your point, having low overheads was definitely a benefit. In terms of using technology, and you've obviously got your own internal software that you guys use, how important has that been in your growth?
I mean, it's been critical, right? For us, obviously, as a business starts, you're on emails, you're on spreadsheets, and even on some third-party products. But it became pretty obvious that in order for us to grow and utilize some sort of software to manage the work, manage the data we're capturing on site, managing the reports that we create for our customers after jobs, using a third party was just not going to work. It was not flexible enough. We certainly weren't able to add any specific features at all, or even if we were, it wouldn't be timely or cost effective at all. And so in the long run, it's actually been far more cost effective to be able to develop our own, what we call a CMMS, or a customer maintenance management system from scratch. That is really the brain of our business, which allows us to interact with all our customers, being able to update them in real time as to the status of jobs. We've got all the information, all the site and system information within there. We can communicate with our customers. They can see their faults. They can convert jobs. We create all our work orders from there. And then even that system interacts with other third-party systems on the back end. Our motto is really, if anything's on email or on a spreadsheet, it needs to be automated. And that's really the direction with which we've gone to, starting with this product years and years ago, and how we will continue to improve. I mean, not only are we interacting and undertaking thousands of jobs a year, but we're interacting with more than 110 partners, employees and teams across the country to deliver the work that we're doing. Now, that's not possible to do via email, and it's not even possible to do via third-party products, because then you deal with issues around licensing and integration and all these sorts of things. And so by having our own proprietary software, we're able to then control that. It also means that the slightest tweaks we can do straight away, which actually can make a real big difference on the back end. And so for us, having that and being able to integrate that with other pieces of software throughout the fulfillment cycle has meant ultimately, and this is the goal of the business, is to provide a transparent and centralized maintenance product that delivers consistency of quality of outcome, regardless of where the system is around Australia or in New Zealand. And that, to me, is the biggest challenge of any service business. How can you grow and ensure, or at least, try to the best of your absolute ability to deliver consistency of quality and outcome? I mean, I say there's a reason why some of the best restaurants in the world have 1 or 2 locations, because it's very difficult you can't have a franchise of tier 1 3-star Michelin restaurants around the world. It's all around the quality of the people that's there. The advantage with what we do is that there's an element of technology, as opposed to obviously hospitality. There's an element of technology that we can use to do that. Interacting with our customers, directing how our teams on site do their work, generating really industry-leading reports that are extremely valuable to our customers and are completely consistent regardless of where the system is. And that's been really important to our growth and important for us to be able to win larger and larger deals and companies.
Yeah, interesting. So, I imagine that becomes part of your value proposition when you're going out to market and talking to potential clients and customers. So what is the value proposition of Industrias? How could you sum that up?
So the value proposition varies depending on the customer, but the way that we fulfill our work is largely consistent. And so it's the same reason why I have the title of CEO of Partnerships, is because we work on that partnership level. And so essentially, ultimately, we're delivering a partnership approach to whoever we might interact with. And it's centralized and it's transparency. And as I said, it's quality, consistency of quality of outcome. Those are the USPs across all our customers. But some customers, for example, we might do work on behalf of installers themselves. So the challenge with maintenance is that installers are still very much focused on construction. That's where they make their money and their profits. And delivering maintenance work is not profitable, and it actually loses money. And so our process that I've just described, we're able to white label our product to deliver a white labeled service for these installers so that they can sell maintenance to their customers and in turn engage with those customers through maintenance and win more project and construction work. So that's the first element, is we're able to deliver a white labeled approach to companies who traditionally have found it very difficult or unprofitable to deliver the service that we can deliver for them and that they deliver for their customers. Have customers, obviously direct customers, so customers who own their own assets. There might be one solar system, for example, in Sydney, or they might have 100 systems across the country. So again, we are able to then ingest all that system data to our portal and then deliver remediation and inspection services across all their systems. And let's be clear, solar maintenance is not just cleaning. Cleaning is a minor part of what we do. A critical part of maintenance is around inspections, active monitoring, remediation work, and making sure that you're just there to ensure the system's performing optimally, but also safely. And so those are the 2 real key sides of how we deliver our work. One is being a white labeled product on the back end for people who need to deliver it. And the other side is system owners. And we took that approach because if you own a solar system, residential, commercial, whatever, who's the first people or the first company that you're calling if something goes wrong? It will likely be the installer, whether it be a year later or 10 years later. And so we thought to ourselves, well, let's try to deliver a product that enables the installer, rather than having to reach out to every single system owner in the country. Let's try to develop a partnership approach to reduce our CAC, or our cost of customer acquisition, to then grow through that partnership model. Again, yes, we've got customer owners, and yes, there's word of mouth and all that sort of great referrals from that perspective. But a big part of how we've grown is through companies who have large portfolios that can consistently add to those portfolios. And not only, as I said, does it reduce our acquisition cost because we don't need to speak to all those customers, but also we don't need to sell those partners on our product. They trust us and they know us. So these installers say, hey, we've now sold additional systems. It could be a insurer, it could be whoever. So their portfolio grows, and as a result, our portfolio grows, if that makes sense. So that's really the crux of how we deliver our work.
Okay, that makes sense. So the end customer can oftentimes be those, a B2C, business to customer, but you are really forming those business to business relationships and partnerships, and really just being that partner, having that partner-led approach. In terms of gaining new partners on board, how do you gain the trust if you've never worked with them before? Do you leverage, case studies in your processes? What do you do?
So I'm hoping that this podcast goes worldwide, and that will take a big impact on our credibility. But no, certainly from an initial pitch, one is that we now have a customer base where they can see that we're the real deal. We don't have sort of tier 4, tier 3 companies. We very much have tier 1 companies. And so the first level of credibility is to say, okay, obviously we do work with all these companies, and you can see that on our website or otherwise. And so therefore we must know what we're doing, and they've been clients with us not for 1 year but for 4 years or for 5 years, and so they keep coming back, and so that develops a level of credibility. And also I think the ability to demo what we do. So again, if you are dealing with another service company called like an insect, like a fleck or something, where you or a cleaning service, for example, it's hard for them to demonstrate anything. You call the company, you deliver you organize the cleaner, they come and they do their thing. For us, we're able to show them our portal. We're able to show them our reports. We're able to show them our capture technology. And so once that we can show them our active monitoring product. And so all that is completely unique in the service-based industry, at least from a solar perspective. And I'd say in many service-based businesses at all. So they can see what we do, how we do it, and the outcome of what we do. And so immediately they can see the credibility or the expertise that we can bring without having to trust us to just do the work on site. So I think both of those things make a big difference. Aside from, of course, solar is a fairly small industry. You build a brand and you build a name, but those first two things are certainly important. And
in terms of your journey from starting the company until now, what have been some of the main challenges that you've faced in scaling your revenue?
So a couple of challenges. One is, as we've touched on before, growing a service-based business. It's hard, right? And that consistency of outcome is what we do and is what we achieve, but it's been really hard to do that. So growth is hard enough, and managing growth of internal employees, etc. But delivering that consistency of outcome, I would say, is our moat. Our moat to our business is our ability to deliver as many jobs as we do, to deliver that consistency. And we've talked about how we do that from a technology perspective, but also the relationships that we have with our partners. A lot of these guys, a lot of our teams, a lot of what they do is installs. And they don't do maintenance, or sorry, I should say they do maintenance. They don't want to do maintenance traditionally because, again, going back to what we talked about before, it's not really profitable for them. And so for us to be able to then deliver value around the jobs, around the scheduling, around the reporting, all the admin that they would normally have to do, we take care of. And so the development of our network of people who are able and willing and very capable and experienced in delivering maintenance services is a massive, massive moat and a USP that we deliver. But that's taken 5 years. Like I would say we've gone through, for the 110, we've probably gone through 400 or 300, potentially 300 teams. And some teams start great and end off not great, or they start off not great, or whatever might be, circumstances might change. But that's been an enormous challenge. And so just like with any business, your biggest moats are your biggest challenges. Otherwise, other businesses would just do what you do, and then it's easy to grow and it's easy to make money. But that's certainly been the challenge. And as you can imagine, being totally transparent around challenges as well is, we have to do a lot of jobs. We're not talking construction work that is millions of dollars. These jobs are anywhere from whatever it is, $500 to $5,000. And so you have to do a lot of jobs in order to be able to stay profitable. And so again, the technology has really helped, but that has been the challenge, to develop a technology to hit the bottom line directly or impact the bottom line.
Nice. And so in terms of your future plans for Industrias, what does that look like over the next, say, year to 2 years, or even 4 and 5 years?
So for us, the maintenance game is still growing. I mean, it's not growing, it's still beginning. We knew that the first 2 or 3 years of this business would be hard, and it was really pushing the proverbial SH1T up the hill to really try and convince the industry that maintenance was actually needed. Because as we discussed, installers were actually selling the opposite. So that was really hard. But now, as systems have aged, it's become necessary, and it's starting to really kick, and the tidal wave is really starting to be there. So we're really starting to see that sort of early adopter stage of the industry, which is where we're seeing. And so there's a lot of white space, and there's not too many companies that do what we do and how we do it. And so some of the largest portfolios in the country don't have any of these products. And so again, the white space in Australia is there since inception, and I see that a large amount of growth continuing for the next 5 years for sure. We'll continue to develop our technology primarily to improve our automation, but we also want to have a bigger presence overseas. So whether that be in New Zealand or in England or the States, we think that we know that this business model will work, because like I said before, if it works in Australia, it will work anywhere. And so that would be the plan over the long term, to use this business model to then expand. And in addition, by the way, on that as well, there's also a product that we want to enhance in the industry, which is what we call maintenance administrator, which is actually installers themselves utilizing our fulfillment process to deliver their own maintenance. So right now we've got our network and we're delivering maintenance for our customers. We want partners or installers to then engage us to help them deliver their own maintenance work. And that's where we see the future of our business, is to grow us, but also help others engage with our fulfillment process as well.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, it's just the beginning. A big industry, and it's certainly growing. So I think you've caught on early, and you're going to see a big growth. What are some of the strategies that you're focused on, right now for the next, say, year, to really build a solid foundation to enable that growth? Is it really working on your more partnerships? Is it continuing to work on your technology? What are some of the key priorities? So
I'll say, unlike the first 3 or 4 years, which the priority was building our network, we've got a pretty good network. And yes, that grows organically, and if there's gaps, we'll find partners. But that's, at a great stage. So the last 12 months, and continuing for the next 12 months, is an enormous amount of investment to our proprietary software to really improve the functionality. And ironically enough, I'd say probably 20% of the functionality that we've put forward, it helps the customer, but 80% helps us and our systems and the way that we do our work, because that essentially impacts the outcome and the final result that the customer sees. So automating certain documentation or work orders or calendar invites or whatever it is, that's where a huge amount of the investment has occurred, and where will continue to occur in terms of automating our engagement with our partners and our report builders and all that sort of stuff that we want to really start to push over the next 12 months. And I also see then an enormous amount of growth for large portfolios. As you can imagine, 2015 wasn't exactly the age of massive portfolios, when the cost of solar was 4 times the amount that it is now, or 10 times the amount that it is now. So we're talking these large portfolios are either happening now or maybe are less than 5 years old. And so maintenance will become extremely relevant for them in the next 12 to 24 months. And so we see a large amount of growth for large portfolios.
Sure, for sure. And if you were to start over again, or not that you would, but was there 1 or 2 pieces of advice that you could give to yourself when you first started the company?
Well, I think a lot of entrepreneurs would say if they knew how hard it was going to be, they wouldn't have started it in the first place. But now it's just too late. So no, I think For me, one thing that we did well was my partner Jamie. He's a very experienced electrician and complements my skill sets. And so I know this doesn't directly answer your question, which I will, but a big point that I want to mention is the complementarity of partnerships as they start a business. I think is hugely relevant. There's a reason why he's not on this podcast, because he's not the salesperson. He is an electrician. He looks like an electrician, but he's brilliant at what he does. And I think that complement was, it was a pivotal part of how we succeeded. For me, I think how I would have grown, I probably would have potentially pushed, maybe not in an investment, but potentially whether it be a family office that might have been a bit more willing or has less of a risk appetite from an upside perspective, might have been able to sort of push to get a little bit of investment so that we could have maybe started some of the stuff that we did a little bit before, and perhaps at this stage we would have grown just a bit further. And also I probably would have engaged more mentors earlier on. I often think that when it comes to mentors, we talk about them, it's very hard to find a really good one that also is relevant to your industry or your expertise, or even has the time to give you the time of day. And so I think putting some time and effort into just trying to find the right person from that fit would have been able to sort of reduce a lot of mistakes and pitfalls at the beginning.
Sure, yeah, for sure. I've definitely heard of and see it where people have or they don't have mentors, but they're always encouraging to get one and to have one. And
easier said than done, though. It's not like they don't exist in a phone book. It's easier said than done.
They're hard to find.
Yes,
they're hard to find because they are time poor. And how do you find those mentors? Is there any?
For me, it was, and I don't profess to say I've got one that I speak to every week or religiously every month, etc. But I got a few people that I look to for advice. One is a family member, so that's been fortunate. But the others have been sort of business leaders from either previous experiences, previous work experiences, or businesses that I've met as part of the journey. But in all cases, it's been fairly organic, because I feel like if it's forced, either it's one of those mentors that require equity in the business, or that you need to pay them to provide your advice. And that might be great, but for me, I wanted people that were contextual and really cared about it. And I think the best way to find those is organically. It's hard to sort of look for people like that. And so once I find those people, I try not to be super annoying to badger them with a whole bunch of stuff, but those are the people that I've found generally the most useful. But I'm still searching for someone who says, here's once a week an hour of my time and ask me anything and I'll give you the best advice. I'm still searching for that.
I think we all are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Look, it's been great to have you on, Daniel. Where can people find you?
So, www.industrias.com.au. We're also under Industrias on LinkedIn. Those are probably the best ways to find us and contact us. Please, more than happy if you want to add me on LinkedIn, Daniel Lazarus, or private message me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. So look at us on LinkedIn and our website. That's the best place.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel.